Welcome everybody to Radicalized Truth Survives. I'm Heidi Cuda, and I'm here with three of my favorite folks willing to speak truth to power: Jim Stewartson, High Fidelity, and Sean Connor. And speaking of speaking truth to power, we have what I like to call well, on the West Coast, we call him a fuck you hero, because we have a woman who actually was willing to put herself on the line, flip off a motorcade, go through everything that happened with that. Juli Briskman, you know exactly who we're talking about. And she got fired for speaking truth to power with her gesture. She sure did. And she came back. And now she is a political force of nature doing the kind of work that needs to be done in communities that need this kind of work. So we're very excited to, have Juli Briskman joining us. Yeah.
Hero, man.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Flip that motherfucker off.
Yes.
And then come back after they, slap you down. That is some real hero shit right there.
That's right.
Yes.
Came back hard too. Yes. That's the best part.
Doing the work and the hard work of democracy. That is what's so incredible. Of course, you guys remember that iconic image and how dangerous in 2017 it was to speak that kind of truth to power, because there were so many forces against the people who had the courage to do so. So this is a true heroic story. And I think in light of everything that we have been enduring as a country and a democracy, having these incredibly brave and brilliant stories to tell of real people doing the hard, heavy labor of democracy is something that we hope to do on this show as often as possible. So so I'm pretty excited about that. And as you can see, I'm still in Boston celebrating with my kids, although being locked in a tiny room with two adult children has been a little bit crazy. But here we are. We keep on filming. We keep doing the work. As you know, this is a show that is an investigative show about disinformation. We have so much to cover in a very short period of time, so we're going to get right into it. Let's dive right into Frontloaded.
Frontloaded.
So as you know, propagandists have been weaponizing our language, taking our words from us and misappropriating them to create moral panic and to create votes. So the first item in Frontloaded is I want everybody to do a little bit of homework and learn about the wide awakes. And why I want you to do this is because words continue to be co-opted. This comes out of that Coke cadre that we spoke about with Nancy McLean. These are propagandist talking points where beautiful things and beautiful words and history, or history that might be tough for us to know about, but we must know about it, ends up being weaponized and misappropriated. So the Wide Awakes actually was a youth movement that flourished around President Lincoln. These young people were tired of the shite presidents that preceded him, which essentially worked for the industrial slave complex, and they actually were against slavery, and they came and surrounded themselves and sort of became kind of an impromptu bodyguard force for Lincoln. So just look them up, know what they're about, and when you hear people misusing terms that they know absolutely nothing about, do what I do and politely correct them, because I'm not having it anymore. We are in an information war. Let's take back our words. Let's know our history. And as LB said yesterday on her and Greg Oliar's show, I'm going to work on this tonight. We all need comebacks. We need like a 20-point list of things to come back with. So I'm going to be working on that. And speaking of people speaking truth to power and taking back language, Christopher Boozy, our friend from Bot Sentinel, who's been on our show before, he actually just dropped his Kamala Harris report. And there are three important points that I'd like to bring to your attention. Everybody needs to know about this. So as you know, VP Harris, America's first female vice president, is a victim of ongoing abuse and hate content on Twitter. It's ongoing, and he has plenty of examples of that on his Twitter feed. Twitter has failed to act. That's a surprise to two of my guys who've been knocked off of Twitter. Must be a shock to hear that Twitter failed to act. The The third point, Twitter found accounts using the N-word and other incredibly abusive terms,
That's disgusting.
and didn't believe the tweets violated their rules. I don't know if you have that image or not, Connor, but
Do you want to bring it up?
yeah.
Okay.
Let's take a look at it. Let's take a look. So this is a doozy from boozy, as I like to say. Okay, so
Which tweet do you want to bring up? The letter
well,
or the
if you look at this one right here,
this one?
yeah,
This
go
is
ahead and hit that.
That's the bad word. Yeah.
So this is the N-word being targeted at VP Harris, who's a woman who's worked very hard and has achieved more than any woman in our country. She's, obviously Nancy Pelosi has gone as far as, has gone very far for women. But, Harris is actually our VP. Now look at what Twitter has to say. Twitter, if you can read that fine print when you zoom in, they believe that this word didn't, that this account using the N-word they didn't believe the tweets violated their rules, essentially what that says.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
We're going to bring Christopher Boozy on next week to talk about this very important report. I would recommend you go to his pinned tweet and read the report. One thing I love about Bot Sentinel is their incredibly insightful reports are like 15 pages, 9 pages. They get right to the point. And Jim and Hi-Fi, as victims of Twitter's, ill-informed safety policy, what say you?
It's not ill-informed. It's weaponized intentionally. Make no mistake. Twitter does political, enforcement of its policies. Clearly, blatantly political, and they put it in the guise of free speech. We're trying to do our best. They know exactly where the harm is. They know exactly who the trolls are, because they're doing business with some of the companies who are employing them. So we're going to get to that in another episode. If anyone wants to learn more about that, you can read my Substack. I wanted to mention woke real quick, because I think that's an important word that absolutely has been weaponized. It wasn't very long ago, a few years ago, that was just a, kind of a nice word that people used to describe, understanding something better, right? Yeah. And instead it got turned into a dirty word for the left. But what's amazing about it is the right, like the far right, QAnon specifically, has been using that word constantly for 4 fucking years. Yeah. Their slogan is the Great Awakening.
The first underground resistance meeting I went to in November of 2016, a former member of President Obama's administration was hosting it. My daughter was the featured poet. The reason it was underground is we knew something serious had happened. We didn't know how dangerous it was going to be to protest it. And so many of the early, influential people that inspired me in this fight were present at that time. But one of the first things we learned about were the wide awakes. And so for me, it's like we're just trying to enrich ourselves with history, give us something to kind of, help us form our movements moving forward. And as you know, without history and without our historians, we're that much further behind in understanding the playing field. So for me, it's very vital, but it's also very important to start thinking of those prebuttals, those ways to take the words back. We do not have the same coordinated talking points that are handed out, from the, Koch network. We actually have to sort of form it organically ourselves, and we got to get better at it. So Hi-Fi, what say you?
Okay. So first, let me explain something to our viewers. Sorry, my power is out today. I'm not wearing a jacket. I'm not dressed up. My AC is off. I'm doing this on my phone in front of a window, so I have some light on me.
Looks great.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
You should do this every time, man. You look great.
I know, it looks great, man.
Yeah. Anyway, look, there is a constant movement through both media and messaging and talk radio that is beating people down, and Twitter is just one more channel in all of that, right? I got booted off of Twitter for talking about Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and Joe Lonsdale and Sergey Grishin. Twitter is absolutely targeting people to take them offline based on what they say. And they're and they're ignoring the shite tier level trolls, because they need those shite tier level trolls because they're in cahoots with them. That's why Elon wants Twitter.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's got his own ring. He's got his own legion of those trolls to go out and do his bidding. Yeah, and then he gives them beta access if they want beta access to the driving, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, he's got a widespread legion of incels for Elon, or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, Twitter. We ask you to prove us wrong, and I think it's hilarious that once again I'm denied, as is Ann Nelson and many others, verification, even though I check all those boxes. It's like, prove us wrong. Prove to us that you are concerned about truth and democracy, because we're just not seeing it right now. And if you really are concerned, then let the guys on my team back on, because they were doing this vital work. So prove
there
it
is
to
a
us.
ray of light. There is a ray of light, and Sean's going to get to it in brief legal briefs, and I can't wait for that.
Okay. All right.
Sweet.
So now we're going to, so moving right along. Thank you so much for participating in what I think was a very important front-loaded. So now we are going to jump into Hi-Fi's word phrase of the week.
All right. So our word phrase of the week this week is elite defection.
Right on.
You may ask, what is elite defection? Well, elite defection is when the inner circle of a ruling authoritarian party decides to leave the leader, right? And Ruth Ben-Ghiat has pointed out that this is something that always happens in authoritarian governments that fall apart.
Exactly.
The inner circle, in this case, I was actually doing some reading on this, and just this week on Monday, a Russian diplomat named Bondarev, who was a career diplomat to the Russian mission to Geneva, he resigned. He said, I can't, the Ukraine war is too much. I can no longer support this government. I resign, and he's out. Of course, he's probably going into hiding. Another guy who had enough was a former vice president of Gazprom Bank, a fellow named Yolobuev. He was actually Ukrainian but lived in Moscow. He decided to leave Gazprom Bank, and probably the most visible of the oligarchs who has turned against Putin is a fellow named Tinkov. And Tinkov came out and he said, I cannot support Putin. I cannot support this war. He was a billionaire. He had a bank called Tinkoff Bank, also known as TCS Holdings Group. And because he came out against Putin, because he said what he did, he was forced to sell off his family's 35% share in Tinkoff Bank. And now he has left Russia, and he has hired security, and he's probably waiting for Putin's assassins to come kill him because he dared speak out.
He's going to have murder-suicide any minute now. The other version of this that I'm excited about is the people who are dropping off of Trump. Now, that doesn't mean everything nowadays, because Trump has been gradually getting sidelined for a long time. But it's going to come to a big shock to a whole lot of people when, things like this split between Mike Flynn and Trump and all of that start actually coming to fore. There are going to be splits in that coalition as well that I think, we're going to need to frankly exploit.
Yes.
Just
divide and conquer.
Just as they are in Russia. They have to start with the oligarchs in Russia. It's not that far from that here, but
Right. Well, that's wonderful.
If we can get Ellen Wood and Mike Flynn to keep fighting and get those two factions, with Satan Gate. Hey, let's keep driving home Satan Gate.
It's inevitable.
Yep.
So I like this thing. Tink
Do
off,
we still have that
off.
graphic? I remember we had a Satan
Gate. Yeah, we do somewhere. Let me see if I can find
it. All right. So
thank you for that.
That is our
we'll
phrase of the week.
Post.
Yeah,
we'll fix it post.
Ruth does say that one of the first signs when something's going to fall, like it did with it, was very, very obvious in Gaddafi's reign. As soon as the elite defection started to happen, it was very clear that he was going to be standing alone, and things did not go so well for him. So, I think that we need to keep an eye on that. Yes.
Absolutely. One interesting thing that just happened recently is the FSB did verify that Putin is fighting cancer.
It's been verified.
And yeah, the FSB verified that. Rumor is it that he has 2 to 3 years left to live.
Right?
A little too long for my taste.
Verification from the FSB does nothing for me. It's, verification out of a mafia state when they say, the biolabs. It's like
homeboy is not looking.
He's not looking good. He's not looking good.
There's definitely something going wrong with that motherfucker. And if he's gonna die, and he knows it, that's not actually terribly comforting at all.
Yeah.
So who's gonna?
He does not give a shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Quite frankly, until he's hanging from a lamppost, I don't think the world will be easy.
I'm the dark one, not you.
I gotta say, I will not shed a tear for that man because of all of the crimes he's committed against humanity and all of the harms he's done. So
I don't think it's controversial. I mean, it's not controversial to me. It's not controversial to say that it would have been nice to see Hitler hung from a lamppost in 1941 before he murdered 6 million people.
I'm just saying. I'm a lover, not a fighter, but there are certain people who have committed such atrocities that even my loving heart says good riddance to you. So not fast enough for me.
Yeah, I mean, I admit there was an NRA convention this weekend in Houston.
Yes, there was.
And I admit that I to myself thought this would be a great time for a very small comet, and just perfect little. Yeah. Right, located, a mini comet, and a magical one. Yeah. So there's no collateral damage, but right, Sorry.
Well,
sorry.
The NRA just needs to acknowledge that they're baby killers. I mean, that's all there is to it.
It's terrible.
I wrote about this. Acosta had an NRA board member on it. Ate him alive. It was like one of the only times recently that the press made me feel good again about America. Acosta was like, cut his mic off and was like, you need to look into your soul and think about how to save the children who are dying over and over and over and over and over again in his fucking face, and then shut him off. It was fucking awesome. Everybody in the press needs to do that every time when faced with these fucking fascists.
Yeah, just do your job, man. Just do your job. Stop platforming propagandists. And if you're going to platform them, then do what Jim just described. Okay, let's...
Speaking of doing your job, let's do Why It Matters.
Yes.
Why does it matter? Why does it matter? Why high fidelity?
I like the PowerPoint like look on this one. It was cool.
Yeah, that was smooth.
I feel like we're going into a business meeting. That'd be good.
Yeah, this is all businessmen.
Well, let's talk about some business, huh? That's why our first story this week is ethics schmethics. So, Amazon had their shareholder vote and their board vote on the first the $220-some million, maybe it was $217 million compensation package for their CEO, they said, oh, yeah, he totally deserves that amount of money, which is ridiculous. And as we had have discussed previously, consulting companies had said that, no, that was way too out of touch. But the real problem is that the Amazon shareholders and board voted down about 15 measures that I feel were pretty important, and I think you might too. The biggest one, the most important one, was that there is absolutely no guidelines now for Amazon to make sure that any nation state or private intel group is utilizing their Amazon Web Services, which is huge global technology data centers, to violate human rights. So that's huge. People need to remember that corporations are just amoral profit machines. They don't care about human rights. If it's cheaper for them and they'll make more money to just ignore that, they will. And that's what this vote shows. All right.
Thank you, Hi-Fi.
Yep.
I mean, we've said it before. I've said it a lot. Sociopathy is a fucking superpower in business. Yeah. And if your CEO, if your board, if the culture of your company is set up to not care about other people, you have a lot more options than if you give a shit. Mm-hmm. So what needs to happen is society itself needs to reorganize so that it is important. It is profitable to these companies to give a shit. That is the major change, in my opinion, that needs to happen.
Well, that would involve legislation and regulation, which we currently do not have. Mm-hmm. And why we don't have it yet, I don't know. But that leads into our next story, which is right on. The Dems say, we have no power. What is this story about? Well, the Democratic Party has reached out to both Apple and Google saying, guys, can you make sure that there are no applications in your app stores that track people's data who might be getting an abortion or looking at an abortion provider? They asked Apple and Google to do this. The reason this story is important is because, again, the internet moves at the speed of internet. Our legislature moves at the speed of, I don't even know. But if you look at Cambridge Analytica and Facebook and how that data was used to target people, if you look at how data is being sold to now apparently target people who are engaging in their right to have an abortion, we talked last week about how, as an American, your data is sold 700 to 800 to 900 times a day on advertising markets. You would think that our legislators, who are supposed to take care of us, who are supposed to protect us, would pass some legislation keeping our privacy rights, our Fourth Amendment rights, solid. But no, they're going to ask Google and Apple. Just ask.
But they're asking nicely, Hi-Fi.
It's look, the legislative branch is completely broken. It does not work at all.
Apparently.
Neither does the judicial, because it's controlled. Yeah. There's one thing that, and I've been writing about, like, what are the practical things we can do? The one most practical thing that would reduce the amount of harm happening is if Apple and Google take Telegram off their fucking stores.
Yeah.
If they did that, I promise you, like the overall level of brain fuckery and harm and pain and confusion and cognitive dissonance in the world would go down significantly. Right. That one thing, and those are public companies. They do have a responsibility to their shareholders, and if we make enough fucking noise, we can make them do it.
Well, that's maybe a campaign that RadPod should start then. So, Sean, you're on it, Sean. As you can see, Sean's the one who gets shit done here. I think that's a campaign we need to start, Sean.
I'll fix it in post.
Okay.
All right. Fix that in post.
Okay.
All right. Our final story this week Get me Roger Stone in prison.
Yeah.
Yeah. Roger Stone is in some trouble again. Good.
He's been in trouble for 50 fucking years, man.
He's been in trouble
And how
for
he's
years.
well.
He's been in trouble for 50 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. My favorite Roger Stone joke is he's gonna rot and die in prison. But so Roger Stone is
and yet he never does.
And yet he never does, and hopefully that's going to change soon because the Department of Justice is investigating Mr. Roger Stone for tax evasion, and they just recently requested all of his tax records, all of his bank accounts, all of his money transfers, all of his everything from 2017 to 2022. Now, the reason this is interesting is because Roger Stone and his wife, as we have found out, had a company called Drake Ventures, and Drake Ventures was used by Roger Stone and his wife to transfer money back and forth, paying for living expenses as business expenses from Drake Ventures. You also had the Stop the Steal Committee, which was put together in 2020. You have the Roger Stone Legal Defense Fund. You have the Stone Family Legal Defense Fund. Basically, you better hope, if you're Roger Stone, that all your T's are crossed, your I's are dotted, and all your columns add up, because the Department of Justice has already gone after his accountants. So they already have some information on Mr. Stone. And if he doesn't come clean, and that was one thing that was interesting. In an article in BuzzFeed, our favorite former IRS investigator, Marty Shield, love you, Marty, love Marty. He pointed out that Roger Stone's attorney said, we're only going to hand over our tax records if you show us what you already have. That's a big old gamble right there, isn't it?
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, does anybody remember the whole thing with Matt Gaetz and the $250,000 to pay for a pardon and all that fucking shit?
That was a guy named Arloff, Arloff.
There is no shortage of shit that Roger Stone should be in prison for. The motherfucker helped engineer the theft of the 2016 election. He fucking connected WikiLeaks to these people, which caused the goddamn election to get stolen. So let's not fool ourselves that his fucking tax problems are going to necessarily put him in prison. He is an expert at weaseling out of this shit. I think it's partly because he cooperates, kinda, at some levels. There's no other explanation for it, that he's got to be fucking, in there at some level. But for 50 years, he's been committing crimes with the worst people in the world. It's
everybody's turncoat.
Well, I will say
maybe this will do it, but given our current record on putting anyone in fucking prison, I'm not hopeful.
Well, pardon fraud was committed because he would be in prison right now if we didn't have a fake president commit pardon fraud. But I will say that Roger Stone recently found religion. I think he's going to need it. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Moving on.
I think he's going to need it.
Moving on. Sean.
Brief legal briefs.
Brief legal briefs.
All right, quickly in brief legal briefs, a couple exciting things is President Trump has to testify in the civil case in New York. So we'll see how that works out.
Yeah,
he's done it a few times before, but this will be interesting. The second exciting piece of news is that Madison Cawthorn, even though he got primaried, the appeal court alleged that he is able to be withdrawn from the ballot, which is great now that we have two states, we have North Carolina and Georgia, upholding the constitutional act of removing individuals who are found to have contributed to insurrection against the United States. So that's very positive. And thirdly, Jim, we're going to split this one with you. The Twitter shareholders of Twitter have moved to sue Elon Musk for tanking the stock price. And if you want to go through this, we can. This is very, I'll let you give the sordid details of this complaint, as they are very interesting. I recommend you guys take a look at it. But it's happening. So there's quite a few instances in which they point to Elon's lack of, I don't know what you would call it.
Well, his blatant
lack of Elon.
Blatant corruption, blatant breach of contract, blatant
contract.
Yes, stock price manipulation, all over the place. This thing, by the way, like, dude who put this together, bless you, you are amazing. It's like 140 fucking claims or something.
It's one of the most detailed, descriptive complaints I've read in a long time.
But the thing is, like if it's not, I don't mean this like in a braggy way, but if you took like all my Elon Musk Substack posts and fucking strung them all together over the last month, it would be more or less this complaint.
Nice.
It's awesome.
It's remarkable.
But it's all legaled out and like and this tweet he made $156 million illegally, literally. Like he agreed in here. You know, you guys know who Ian Miles Chong is? This fascist little
still great.
Fucking one of the worst, right? Like Andy fucking guy. So this guy replies to Andy No, who says, you know, if there's 25% Twitter bots, that'll take the price of Twitter down 25%. And Elon Musk goes, exactly. To this guy, Andy No, and if Andy No's totally false claim is correct, it saves Elon Musk billions and billions of dollars. It's fucking right there in the it's amazing. It's amazing.
So can I ask you guys, so do you think that he just believes that he's above the law, or someone's squeezing him to do this type of work, and or can we still prosecute billionaires in America?
Of course he thinks he's above the law.
Yeah, I think he's gotten away with it so many times, similar to Trump, that he's got either a hope, a false belief that he'll get away with it again.
Let's prove him wrong.
I got one thing to say. Yep. Elon Musk is a fucking problem. All right, I'm good.
But you know, looking at Australia, looking at the UK, people are getting sick of the entitled set, feeling that they are bigger and better than the great unwashed. So this is a story far from over. And so, anyway, thank you for that. And let's move right into Hellscape. This is perfect.
Jim Stewartson's Hellscape. Oh, fuck.
You know, the more I see that, I want to go back to the old one.
Right. Fine. We'll talk about that.
Me out.
We'll talk
about that.
Yeah. Jim, you're on.
I still can't see it, so you know.
It's scary. It's like Slayer concert shit, dude. It's
that one. I love that one.
I love Slayer. Best show I ever saw was Slayer.
But speaking of Slayer and spooky things, I'm going to talk about fear today.
Yeah.
Because fear is at at the bottom of our sort of neural system is what drives us, right?
Lizard brain,
It's this fucking limbic. It's this limbic shit way back here that we got when we were crawling around like this on the fucking sand, trying to figure out what we were gonna eat, right? It's that fear of, oh shit, there's a giant shadow. It's probably something that's gonna eat me. I better bury into the whatever I'm gonna bury into, right? It's that primal, and so fear is valuable, right? It's important. If you're not afraid of things that are going to hurt you, then you're going to get hurt, right? The issue is when fear is weaponized, when it's intentionally, created in other people for a purpose, right? For someone's political, personal, ideological purpose. What they want to do is put fear in you. And, I've made no mistake that I'm an atheist. One of the things that I don't like about religion is the phrase fear of God, right? It is a fundamental idea that, our society has, that you are supposed to be afraid of some authority, right? In order to keep you under control, frankly, right? And so fear gets weaponized in all sorts of ways, and we've seen it played out over the last few weeks in ways that I think are really important to talk about, and the effect that it has on us included, not just the sort of political ramifications of what's going on. The basic idea is this is terrorism, right? Like there's no other word for what we saw in Buffalo or Uvalde or any of these. It's terrorism. And it's the same thing that, frankly, the right wing has been doing to us for years now, is political terrorism. They are scaring people into compliance, and in some cases scaring them into joining their cult, right? Scaring them into joining the other side. It's part of the way that cults indoctrinate people is you scare your target into believing that this is the only option they have, right? Is to join this group over here that's telling you if you come here, you'll be safe from these monsters that we're telling you about. And you can see that obviously play out in its most despicable form in great replacement theory, which is driving so much of this madness, which is this fear by almost entirely men who are white, all white, afraid of being replaced somehow by all the dark people or the Jews or whatever the fuck it is they're afraid of being replaced by. But it's fear, and that fear is intentionally being put into the minds of millions of people. We talked about Telegram. That's where a lot of it happens. I started warning about it a fucking year and a half ago that there was great replacement theory being spread all over Telegram and that the Nazi channels are exploding. I said that a year and a half ago, and now it's as bad as, it's worse than I could have imagined. It's millions of people in these fucking channels getting fed this lie, getting installed with this fear that they are being replaced. And the pernicious cycle of fear is that those people who are fearful of anyone who isn't white go on to be terrorists to create fear in others, right? To create fear in us. That's why they're called terrorists, right? The only reason people do it is because they think it's going to have, in Mike Flynn's words, local action has a national impact, right? That's just a euphemism for terrorism. It means we're going to do something to scare you into either being compliant or changing your mind into what we want. And Timothy Snyder, who's one of the most brilliant people on earth, who showed us, along with Sarah Kendzior and others, exactly what was going to happen many years ago, has, the 20 things to know about fascism. And number 18 is be calm in the face of the unthinkable. And that is saying in a different way, there's going to be terrorism. Your job is to not be terrorized, right? And the difference between fear, which is normal and healthy and part of us, and terror, which is paralyzing, right? Terror, you think of it, and it's like terror, and you can't do anything. You're stuck. And that's what terrorism is intended to do. And you, my friends and our viewers, are victims of terrorism. What's happened over the last few weeks is just the latest examples of it.
Yeah.
And the trauma you're feeling and the fear that you're feeling is perfectly normal. But our job collectively is to not be terrorized by it, is to not get paralyzed by it, and to look it in the eye and say, yeah, I'm afraid of you, and I'm going to fucking punch you in the nose anyway, right? We got to start looking at our own fear and realizing it's normal, but we have to get over it, right?
Yeah.
Finally, I want to point out one other component of fear. Sean, do you have that? Can you just pull that article up for a second?
Yep. I was about to ask it. Yeah, here we go.
So these motherfuckers are a different kind of fear, right? It's called cowardice. There were 19 of these good guys with guns who I'm sure were super down with all the fucking police departments that they built up at the literal school system to prevent exactly this. There were 19 of these fucking cowards in this hallway, and they did nothing. They listened to children get shot and bleed out. That's what they did for a fucking hour. That is a different kind of fear and just as dangerous, right? It's these fake people who claim to be authority figures, who claim to have our best interests at heart, who at the end of the day, when their kids' lives on the line, do nothing.
They're failures. Every single one should be thrown out, gone. They no longer deserve the right to be a police officer.
Cowards. Every last one of them. So, listen, I just wanted to I'll close this out by just saying, look, again, your fear is normal. You are right to be scared. I'm scared out of my ass for my kids, for our future, for our country, for the fucking world. But I refuse to be terrorized by it. I'm not going to let them make me get paralyzed and do nothing. And all I would ask of our viewers is just try. I know it's hard sometimes. Try not to be terrorized.
Well said. Yeah.
And I would ask our viewers to fight back.
Beautifully put, Jim.
Perfect timing as well. Yeah, we just have our guests.
I want to say one thing, two quick things, Jim. As I sat in my daughter's incredible commencement ceremony, I was gripped with fear because these brilliant young leaders from Wellesley were going to go out into the world and wreck shop. Every one of these girls is going to do something amazing. And the woman who spoke was a physicist from Pakistan who was a Wellesley graduate who learned how to fix bikes and then learned how to invent things that ended up leading to our understanding of gravitational sound waves. And she was incredible. And I sat there and I was in fear, and then I was angry because Wellesley should have claimed having a graduate as the first woman president. But we did not have enough moxie to go out there and demand her Hillary Clinton be, instated as our president when we saw this fraud perpetuated on us. So that's one thing I wanted to say. And also, can you please lead our viewers to your Substack that explains that the Buffalo shooter had a chat room that included a federal agent? Just please lead them there so they can see that there is more to this than meets the eye, and to be aware that we are entering a season where we have to listen to exactly what you said, stand up.
if you can go to jimstewartson.substack.com. I've written a lot about the Buffalo shooter. I've read, the entire manifesto. And what were you asking me, Heidi? I'm sorry.
That there was a federal agent in a chat room that could have warned that this was going to actually happen and did not.
Sorry, I think about that fucking thing, and it gets me. Yes, there was
former FBI. Sorry,
originally from Texas.
Yes, there's a former federal agent who was grooming, and there are multiple times where he's referencing this guy, where this guy is telling him things that sound just like ISIS indoctrination, right? You are the light of the world, and is your life meaningful, and like really, really like exactly like ISIS style kind of recruiting, and in my opinion, absolutely trained this kid. Like this kid, and I've seen everything there is to see. This kid wasn't just like somebody who did this. You thought of this in his basement and ordered some shit online. This kid was trained, very well trained, and this entire thing was planned, a long time in advance. And he was absolutely groomed and recruited to do this. And there's a fucking former federal agent involved, right?
And he's under investigation, as are these other guys in the chat room. So just eyes wide open, we go, and be very proud to have eyes wide open. And thank you, Jim, as always, for just an incredible, your incredible understanding of this and giving us kind of an insight that we wouldn't otherwise have. So I appreciate it. I love our pet robot in the background, giving punctuation. Yeah. Applauding and moaning.
Says, I'm not afraid.
So do we have Julie here?
Of course, yes. Let's
oh my
there she is. Hey!
Oh, we're so happy. Oh, you look fantastic. We are so happy you're here. I'm so honored that you said yes to this. As I introed you prior, this is a woman who spoke truth to power with a gesture. And when I asked her what prompted her to flip off Trump's motorcade, she said all of it, all of it, all of it. All of it, all of it, and I'm getting a chill right now. I'm getting chills right now. So we need our brave people, and we need these stories, and we need to share these stories with our viewers. So to me, this is one of the most iconic moments of the last 6 years.
Truly.
I mean, I'm so emotional just looking at this right now. So, Julie, when you did this, I am sure you suffered consequences for this, but walk us through this moment and the immediate aftermath, if you don't mind.
Sure, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. Happy Memorial Day weekend. I had gone on a little bike ride. I had just run a marathon, and I thought, I just need to get on my bike. And Trump's golf course is literally like a stone's throw from my house. So I was riding down that road, and all these black cars started passing me, and I'm like, oh yeah, he's golfing again today. He's golfing again today.
Right.
I had seen it on the news earlier and didn't really make a connection. It was just busy, normal homecoming for my daughter kind of stuff going on. And they started to go by me, and I just thought, this guy, at that point in time, he was throwing paper towels at hurricane victims, and he was trying to dismantle Obamacare. He had canceled all the marketing for the, enrollment for Obamacare. The way he obviously treats women, I was just done. And I thought to myself, there aren't many people who get this close to this guy. And so I just told him what I thought of him with what I had, with what I had at my disposal.
Bravo. Just so well done.
Thank you. I was subsequently fired from my government contracting job for that. Actually,
let me just tell our viewers, she didn't wait for an investigation. She went in to her employers and said, that was me. I just need to let you know. And they fired you because they said there are certain social media protocols.
Right. I think if I hadn't have been fired, nobody would know who I am. I was working part-time at a yoga studio, and they had locally, people had started figuring out who it is. Like I'm involved in a lot of stuff locally, lived here for 20 years. They started at the back of that shirt is my local running club I'm a co-founder of. So, and my boss at the yoga studio messages me and she says, hey, can you take the yoga studio name off of your Facebook profile? We are already getting hate mail and emails saying they're going to boycott and threats. And so I went into the government contractor that Monday, the next day, and I said, listen, I wanted to let you know my other employer was getting some hate mail basically. And also the media, there was like one media person that had figured it out and had called me. And I said, I just wanted to let you know. And she said, well, you're allowed to ride your bike. And if you talk to the media, just don't do it on company time. And I thought, all well and good. And the next day I walked in and was held back after a meeting, and I was fired on Halloween, walked out unceremoniously with my boss, literally my boss. Thank God I wasn't dressed up for Halloween. I mean, it was so humiliating. It was so humiliating. And they used this excuse about that I had posted the picture on my cover photo on Twitter and those sorts of things. And, okay. And then that weekend, I didn't tell my family because my daughter's birthday was coming up. And I'm laying in bed that weekend and I thought, oh, you know what? I wonder what happened to that guy, because I was in charge of their social media. And there was a guy that was reported to us who had the company name everywhere and had made rude and very disrespectful comments in a Black Lives Matter feed, and he was busted for it. And I thought, I wonder what's going on with that guy. Well, that guy, who was a COO kind of level, he wasn't fired. And I went and looked at his social media. Oh yeah, surprise!
Yeah,
surprise!
Surprise! Old white guy, not fired.
Wow.
Because of his messaging, and so then that's when I called. That's when all hell broke loose, basically. And I went to the media and told my story.
Good for you.
I'm so moved by you sharing this with our viewers. And on a personal level, I became unemployable when I went public as a member of the independent media. I'd been in corporate media, tapped out of corporate media, realized I was a woman unshackled by a corporation in the run up to Trump, and that I could speak very loudly with my platform, but could not. Nobody was going to hire me. Nothing good came of it. The job I was supposed to get when everyone thought Hillary would be in, I did not get. So hearing your story is emotional for me personally. I'm sure many people who watch this and many women will recall those of us who used our real names and spoke very loudly in 2016 and 2017. But they say that cliche that I'm sure most people hate, one door closes, another one opens. A big, huge, door opened for you, or you kicked it down, one or the other. What'd you do?
Well, listen, you know what? I grew up with white privilege, and I tried to do all the right things. But the fact of the matter is, I'm also a woman in a male-dominated world. And I had already taken some lumps, as a single mom, and setting aside my career when I was married, and always hearing, just keep your mouth shut and do the right thing. Everything's going to be fine. And this was literally probably the third or fourth time a job hadn't worked out for me. And I was like, that's it. I'm so done trying to do the right thing. I was just done, shackles off at that point, whatever, to let the chips fall where they may. Of course, I was terrified about not having health care. I was terrified about everything. But there comes a point in time where you just have to say, screw this, I'm done. And I've got my mom on the one shoulder. No, stay quiet. Don't go to the media. Don't. And then the chair of our county calls me up and she said, I want you to run for office.
Wow.
She said, I looked you up. She said, I looked you up. I know that you volunteer for Boy Scouts. I know that you raise money for the local swim team. I know that you played in the local, orchestra. I know that you volunteer. You were on the PTA. She's like, I know all these things about you. You are so much more than that finger. You are serving the community. Please run for office.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah. So
I love that person.
I
love that person.
Whoever that was,
we love you.
I mean, I just have to say, like, that what you did and how you recovered from it is like emblematic of what needs to happen across this entire country and the world. Frankly, people need to start looking at these just worse than worthless people like Donald Trump and telling them exactly what they think of them, and knowing there's going to be repercussions, get up and do it again.
And Ted Cruz, right? Stand up and yell at them in the restaurant.
There you go.
And I tweeted out, good for that guy yesterday, and someone's like, oh, that's the next opposition mailer against you. And I thought, I think most of my constituents are okay with me giving Ted Cruz the virtual finger. Okay?
Yeah.
But
can we give him the real finger?
I got my mug. See my mug?
Oh, nice.
Nice. Oh my gosh, she did it her way.
That'll be the thumbnail for the show.
Before we talk about your journey as supervisor, where you're actually making an incredible impact on the local level, which I think is the most important thing in our country right now.
Yes.
I saw that there was a tweet that you'd put out that I thought was very profound and also very gutsy as a person with a public platform, where you show a gunman coming into a school and children huddling under a desk saying, and they told us masks were dangerous. F yeah. Yes.
Listen, yes. Loudoun County has been ground zero for this BS about, open our schools and no CRT, and, it just goes on and on and on. It's all about defunding our schools. It's all about charter schools. It's all about,
we know what it's about. We did this show on disinformation.
Virginia in particular, though, has been targeted
very much.
There are a lot of these, very professional sort of psychological operations guys who went in there and really, really turned up the heat on the anti-CRT thing, and candidly, like, activated a bunch of latent racism and and Virginians who are south of the Mason-Dixon line, and there's still a bunch of that around, and these guys intentionally turned that up. And it swung the election to
and they're taking credit for winning the election. I know.
But let's go back to you winning an election and some of the policies that you're enacting.
Sure. So, I ran on more connectivity and trails, supporting women, fully funding our schools, climate, being better about the climate and all this stuff. So we've done a number, and equity, of course. We have written our ordinance so that our employees can unionize in the county.
Nice.
You did jazz hands on the dais.
I had to throw that in at some point. There was too many times I could have had to.
Was that?
We have been fully funding our schools. We implemented a environmental commission that's working on our energy strategy for the county. Our county's got like 430,000 people. We've got about 80,000 kids in our school. So we're a fairly large county for Virginia. We were allowed to take down our Confederate statue. Finally, the General Assembly let us do that. And one of the interesting things that came out of that was I said, well, we've got a lot of other stuff that honors these, traitors, and massive resistance was huge in Virginia. I don't know if you know that. Harry Byrd and all that. So I brought an initiative to look at every piece of infrastructure in our county that we, owned and maintained. And if it honored a Confederate or a massive resistance icon, that's not a great word for them, but you know what I mean. We went and renamed them all. rename. Oh, and the blowback from both of those was amazing. I also ran on supporting women, and we were the 38th state to pass the ERA. So that was in our legislative agenda, but also 2/3 of the women in my district over the age of 16 are part of the labor force. Wow. And 2/3 of the women kicked out of the 2/3 of the people kicked out of the workforce because of COVID were women. Why did they leave the workforce? Childcare. Yeah, exactly. We are a nation that relies on our schools for childcare. Yep. And so I actually just started an initiative with a little bit of our ARPA money. I realized that we could use it for childcare. So I just started an initiative to do a countywide childcare needs assessment. So after that, we can pump some money into new programs or to expand our existing programs so that we can get women back to work. We've got more than 1 million women still sitting on the sidelines. And I hear some of these even state level, politicians saying, oh, we have to do better with our pipeline to get workers from college or high school. And I'm like, dude, we've got 1 million women sitting on the sidelines. If we meet women where they are and help them get back in the labor force, by the way, it helps our GDP in the county by millions if we get them. Anyway, sorry, I could go on and on.
No, and it's so contrary.
No.
We want you to go on. That's why you're here.
I got a team of feminists here. These guys are total hardcore feminists, and I love them so much for all the love they have for women.
Heidi, I just was curious, had you ever considered running for office, or had you ever considered the public sector prior to your event? I guess you would. I mean, had that something that interested you, or?
A very good friend of mine ran for this very seat in 2015, and I helped him because he was a friend of mine and I knew his wife really well. And so I had kind of started to realize that, Loudoun County is a Republican-dominated board of supervisors. And this woman that is sitting here, she's not so great, but he lost and she was in for another 4 years. Okay. So I kind of started learning about it then, but I hadn't really considered it until Phyllis called me and said, will you run? And it still took me a while to decide because we don't believe that we are qualified to represent. Right. We don't believe it. People have to ask us a lot of times. I think that's getting better. But also, I wasn't a CEO or real high up in a corporation. I was, a part-time work here and there. And I was a single mom and I did a lot of stuff. But guess what? I've been here for 22 years. I know a lot of stuff. I've done a lot of volunteer work. So what I did was I went and worked for a lot of other campaigns while I was deciding, because I said, listen, I need to know if this works with my personality, knocking doors, raising money, phone banking. So I worked for Jennifer Wexton. I worked my butt off for Jennifer Wexton. And then I worked my butt off for the person that replaced Jennifer Wexton. And I'm like, okay, I like this. And then I decided to run.
It seems like it fits you perfectly, and good for Phyllis for recognizing that, because
I knew the day I got fired, I was going to get involved.
Oh, good. Yeah. Okay.
Either that night or the very next morning, I went and signed up for the Democratic Party to work the polls. We have elections every year in Virginia. I went and signed up to work the polls for the Northam, that race.
Gotcha.
I knew I was going to do something. I was pretty sick of this.
For the record, I think women should. I think men should be. There should be like a pause with dudes for like 50 years. Right. Just somewhere in there, like
I think we've all been on the record as saying,
a long time, because we've had a long time of these.
The males have had plenty of time to fuck it up,
just to screw everything up and make everyone miserable, and honestly,
and they've done it. Good job, guys.
We've been successful at that, but women are better leaders. They just are. And,
well, look at Scandinavia, so those Nordic countries, right? They've done a great job with their female leaders.
Look at New Zealand. She's kicking ass. I love her.
These guys have gone on the record as saying, just give women the keys. I have a couple things I need to ask of you. One, how did you deal with the hate? And can you offer words of advice for those of us who stick our necks out and we get, whether it's paid, trolled hate or organic hate? How did you deal with that? What are your best words of advice for that?
So my last name is Briskman, and a lot of people assumed that I'm Jewish when this happened. So a lot of hate, a lot of racist hate came toward me. And I had considered changing my name before that, but I was like, you know what? That gave me just a window into the hate that's in our country. What I do is try not to give them air. Mm-hmm. That's what I do, because, and I can do that because I can affect policy change.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And I have a platform now where I can choose when I want to say and what I want to say and when I want to say it. Mm-hmm. I don't have to say how high when they say jump. Mm-hmm. The guy in Loudoun County that's leading all this crap is a former Trump appointee, mm-hmm. and who just moved here, like after, you know, he left office or something like that. They're funded by the 1776 PAC. I mean, mm-hmm. these people are evil people. Mm-hmm. And you know, our LCDC chair's getting death threats on the regular. Mm-hmm. My counterpart on the school board, her name's Atusa Reeser. She's Iranian. Mm-hmm. And they call her literally on social media Ayatollah Atusa. Mm-hmm. So it is real. You have to take some of this stuff seriously. Mm-hmm. I have sort of a file with the sheriff's department with a friendly deputy, because our sheriff is a whole nother story. I bet. I have a friendly deputy who has documented everything, even though only one thing's been actionable, where they had to go interview a guy in Fairfax that was threatening.
But we believe all this stuff should be under hate crimes. We believe that online should not be treated differently than offline. And I'm glad that you are using words like evil to frame it. When you say you got a Trump appointee, the first thing that hits my head, because I've documented a lot of these state appointees, they have a history of some really gnarly bad stuff. If it's not corruption, then sometimes it's trafficking kids across state lines. You don't have to look very hard at Trump appointees to find the horrible, heinous things, because they say water seeks its own level. With the people who hang out with him often are very shady. So I think
we already know this guy dated a high schooler when he was in like law school. Who's never
okay, so that's what I'm talking about. You never have to go far. So I think
dude,
why is it always like that?
Always projection.
It's projection.
Projection.
Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to bring up, because you mentioned white privilege, and the guys know that I've been on a Karen apology tour. I've been traveling for the last few days, and I've been in planes, I've been at hotels, and I'm continually observing these privileged women treating the people in the service industry like such shit. And I swear to God, these folks on the receiving end deserve some kind of medal of valor for putting up with what we call like the Karen, attitude. I think that they are so unaware of how horrible and abusive they are. I've seen 3 women abused. One abused a stewardess, another one abused a hotel worker. And what's it going to take? I am a white middle-aged woman. I do not want to be associated with those women. Don't think I'm like that. I'm the one smiling, saying, thank you. I'm having a great time. My room is perfect. I don't mind the bathroom being down the hall. Like, I'm good. I'm good. And
can I just add to that real quick? I think part of the reason that we see a lot more of that is women are not immune to online radicalization.
Right. Yes.
Right.
Very true.
Right.
Because a lot of these Karens are actually brainwashed. Right.
Yeah,
they've been sort of all this propaganda about all the woke people and God knows if these people are people of color. They just lock into this mode of being aggressive and angry.
In each example, Jim, it was a white woman speaking down to a person of color. So I think you've probably hit on something very critical.
Yeah.
As a woman who has spoken truth to power, who has also assumed power in your community, can you offer any words to people to kind of check themselves? Like, what do you think?
No, just solving society's ills. No problem.
That's such a tough one. Listen, after I got divorced, I live in a community that was designed for the people who live here. Let's just say color of law.
Understood.
Right?
Yeah, understood. Gotcha.
And when I was getting my divorce, and after I got divorced, I literally could not hang around with some of the women I was hanging around with, because it was like a lot of complaining about things that once you have to be the head of household and there's not a husband paying your health insurance and paying the mortgage, you just can't listen to some of this stuff.
There's no time.
They've been radicalized. Look at the pictures with Madison Cawthorn and the pictures with this guy from Fight for Schools in Loudoun County, the Trump committee. It's all white women behind him. And honestly, I'm not going to say losing childcare was not real for women who work, but a lot of women in Loudoun County who didn't work, they were just pissed off because they couldn't go play tennis because their kids were at home doing school. Listen, I think
good point. That's a good point.
It's true, and that's their life was changed against their will. They had to stay home and make sure their kids were in school.
Yep.
And not do what we normally do during the day when their kids aren't in school.
Social activities,
Not to get darker, but they're currently like taking more away, right? Supreme Court is about to take women back economically 50 years, right?
And turn us into felons. We can't vote.
COVID took us back 30, so we're going to be back to the 1800s. Sorry, Jim.
That's about right. They all of these gains, a lot of these gains are because women have control over their own fucking bodies, right? And that's about to get taken away in half the country, and then the rest of it will follow if we get another Trump.
I don't know if you saw the Alyssa Milano video that she put out right after Roe v. Wade, and there's literally a chart that shows the number of women that got into the workforce after birth control was allowed for unmarried women, the number of women that went to college. I mean, the diagram, the chart, the line just went straight up.
Yep.
And what I said about that is reproductive health care is what allows women to pursue happiness, right? Yep. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Women can't go for any of that if we don't have reproductive rights. We just can't. Now, listen, I the only thing I try to do, and there's some people that you can't un-Karen. There's just some people you can't un-Karen, right? You just can't. But you can try to talk to people, and I think that these issues are so sensitive that I think it has to be, knocking on doors when you're campaigning, that one-on-one conversation. And the more people like us that we can get out there knocking doors and having real conversations, right? Like, listen, personally, I was screwed by the cost of healthcare twice in my life, right? I couldn't go back to work when we came back from overseas. My job wouldn't pay for the childcare. And when I did get divorced, I had to take a job that paid crap. But my kids came there after school to my job. It was like a private school or whatever. But did anybody account for that in any of the negotiations for my divorce, that I had childcare covered? Nobody. They didn't even care that I got childcare covered. I'm like, guys, this is a chunk of money. Nope, didn't care. So when you can tell those personal stories, like, reproductive health care had allowed me to go into the workforce. Reproductive health care allowed me to take care of my 3 existing children and not go into poverty.
Yep.
If we can tell those real life stories, I think maybe we can change some opinions.
I hope so. I had an interchange with Margaret Atwood, which was lovely, by the way, and she is looking at this and zooming out and saying this is about white male property owners wishing to assume power. And so once we can frame it, we can see what the real enemy is. I don't think we get as caught up in the minutia. In the couple of minutes we have left, I would love you very much, speaking from your experience, how to raise courage levels in this country to do the right thing and to have the courage to speak truth to what is, going to be a continuous attempt in authoritarian capture in our country. We've learned that what we on this show are more than willing to call fascism. We've learned that it never really goes away. It just sleeps. And right now it is active. We are actively dealing with authoritarian attempts in basically destroying our democracy in pursuit of defending capitalism. It's as simple as that.
Wow.
Another easy question for you. Yeah.
That is not an easy question. Listen,
no pressure. No pressure.
It's so important to hear from people.
Autocratic capture was the term we used in my lawsuit against my company. Autocratic capture was our theory as to why I got fired. Right.
That's right.
I worked for a government contractor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were too afraid of the Trump administration to have someone like me, who was flipping off the Trump administration, be on,
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Just for that.
Which is the literal, this is the poster for free speech.
Free speech, exactly.
It's the poster, right? Because free speech, everybody always complains about free speech on social media. That has nothing to do with the First Amendment. The First Amendment is about the government controlling people's speech, right? And the best example in the world of that is flipping off the president of the United States. I don't give a shit what party you're on and who the president is. Every single American has the goddamn right to do that. Exactly. And the worst, most sort of, third world thing we can possibly do is do retribution on people who exercise that right. So I could not be more grateful for you.
The guardrails of democracy held because I didn't go to jail, right? Yeah, so I was fired. There was a tinge of that autocratic capture, but I didn't go to jail.
That's
the
right.
guardrails of democracy held because Trump lost fair and square.
Yeah.
The guardrails of democracy can hold if we keep talking about it and we keep getting people involved.
Good.
Yep.
Volunteer for a candidate you believe in. That's all I can say. Volunteer for a candidate who has values that match your values, because we have to get the people who are fascists out of power.
Yeah. All of them. Every one of them, like a rot.
The reason we have this Supreme Court is because we don't have a popular vote that wins the election.
Yeah.
That's right.
And we have overrepresentation of states in the Senate.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have to.
Wyoming has 2 senators, and so does California. That is bonkers.
We're structurally 10 or 15% down, to begin. So one of the other things we have to do is get everybody that off the fucking couch, because this is not a midterm.
Yeah.
This is not the midterms.
Yeah.
Right? This is every presidential election that ever existed in American history, because we're not going to have another one if these people get back in control. We're just not.
The last thing I'll say, Heidi, is the midterms are important, but the state level is so important too, because so much of this is happening at the state level.
That's right.
They were after our registrar in Loudoun County recently. Yeah.
Right.
Youngkin came in and got rid of our elections officer, a statewide election. That's like the first thing he did. So we luckily still have control of the Senate in Virginia. If we didn't have control of the Senate, we would be down the tubes right now.
Oh my God.
And if you don't think Virginia would have, that this guy would have tried to flip the electoral vote from Virginia, he would have done it in a heartbeat.
Great point.
Right. So a lot of people don't pay attention to those state seats, but you got to pay attention to those state seats.
That's right.
Julie, thank you. Yeah.
That's right.
Thank you so much, Julie. This is remarkable.
100 million people who didn't vote and don't vote. We need people to know that. As F.P. Wellman taught us, if you think you're just going to vote your pocketbook, you're not going to like that under authoritarian capture. Yeah. And please, I've been saying this for half a year now, find your candidate and work really hard. I'm running a campaign on a candidate who I think will be a game changer in my community, and the incredible people who show up every day to canvass and to phone bank and to mail postcards and to talk to their neighbors. And they are across every political spectrum, which has been very insightful for me. More of that, please. And you are an example of that. Somebody making change, really against a lot of odds in a community that obviously is supporting you because you're doing the work.
Yeah. Man, Loudoun is right on the border. I'm from Maryland.
Yeah, just from Maryland.
I'm from Silver Spring.
Oh, okay.
So I just wanted to say, hey, all my friends in Maryland, move to Loudoun County and vote for Julie.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Julie.
Julie.
So
thank
you so much for being here.
We couldn't have asked for a more memorable show on Memorial Weekend.
That's right.
I just have one question for you, Julie, and I think because of this, you are as strong as you are. You're as tough as you are. So here's my question for you.
IO.
There you go.
You set us up. You set us up.
I love it.
That's my diploma up there, the tall one.
Nice.
We
Good
have
job,
a
you two.
Cleveland Akron boy who's Ohio proud. Jim and I are always trying to get him to move to California.
Well done, you guys.
Oh my God, that was a beautiful show. Thank you so
Julie.
much, everybody. Julie,
Bye.
thank you so much.
Have a great weekend.
Bye.
You as well. Oh my gosh, that was so incredible. I'm so grateful to her.
Well done.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank you. I'm always scheming, I'm thinking, who are we gonna get?
That was killing. Good job, high five. Good job, high five. You
I
killed
love that.
Little
Totally.
That was well done, man.
That was good.
Well done.
That was great, guys. Happy Memorial Day, everybody. That was really.
I know. It felt really good, right?
Yeah.
Get to work, everybody. Get to work. Don't believe it. There's a lot of people out there saying, once again, votes don't matter, that only confronting people in restaurants. Hey, I am not against confronting Ted Cruz in a restaurant, but I'm saying
confront the shit out of him.
Vote. Make good trouble.
Sushi.
Vote.
Also,
make good trouble and vote.
Them. Also,
yes.
It is fucking time to confront them.
Also,
anywhere you can.
Call evil out. This is evil. What they do is evil. Branding somebody in racist terms is evil. What we're going to talk with Boozy about next week, this is a kind of evil. We're going to use better words to fight this war. Show up at the polls. And and everybody, when you have an opportunity to be a fuck you hero, just do it.
Do it, guys.
We'll see you soon.
Love you guys.
All right.
Hey, guys.
What a show.